I always knew I was the second choice in my family. Not the favorite, not the golden child. Just Amelia, the afterthought. My older sister Olivia was everything I wasn't: confident, ambitious, and most importantly, the apple of my parents' eyes. 3 years older than me, she cast a shadow so long I sometimes wondered if I'd ever feel the sun on my face. Growing up in our suburban Boston home, I learned early on that Olivia's achievements were cause for celebration, while mine were merely expected. When she made honor roll, my parents took us all out to dinner. When I did the same the following year, I got a "good job, honey," and a pat on the head. When Olivia became captain of the debate team, my father bragged to everyone at his law firm. When I won a statewide writing competition, my mother simply asked if that would help with college applications. It wasn't that they were cruel, they weren't. They just had a peculiar blindness when it came to me, as if I were somehow less vibrant, less real than my sister. Sometimes I wondered if it was because Olivia looked so much like my mother. Same chestnut hair, same aristocratic nose, same confident stride, while I inherited my father's sandy blonde hair and quiet demeanor. But that never quite explained the disparity in their affections. Only one person in our family seemed to see me clearly: my grandfather Mike, my father's father. A retired art professor with kind eyes and hands perpetually stained with paint, Grandpa Mike was my refuge. While my parents attended Olivia's debate tournaments and soccer matches, I'd slip away to his small house on the outskirts of town, where he taught me about Monet and Picasso, how to mix colors to capture the exact shade of a sunset, and most importantly, how to see beauty in the quiet, overlooked corners of the world. "You've got an artist's soul, Amelia," he'd tell me as we sat in his studio, the air thick with the smell of oil paints and turpentine. "You notice things others miss." His own paintings hung throughout his home, vibrant landscapes, thoughtful portraits, and his specialty, detailed still lifes that somehow captured not just the objects, but the feeling of a moment. My favorite was a painting of a pair of reading glasses resting on an open book beside a half-empty cup of tea. Something about it spoke of peaceful solitude, of quiet enjoyment, of finding contentment in stillness. I would stare at it for hours, finding new details each time. "That one's special," Grandpa Mike told me once when he caught me looking at it. "I painted it the year after your grandmother died. It was her book, her glasses, her favorite teacup. Sometimes I feel like she's still reading in that chair, just stepped away for a moment." I understood then why the painting felt so alive. When it came time for college, my parents made it clear that while they would cover Olivia's tuition at Princeton, she's studying business after all. That's a real investment in her future. My plans to study English literature and creative writing at Boston University weren't quite as worthy of their financial support. "It's not that we don't support your interests, Amelia," my mother said, her voice dripping with the particular condescension she reserved just for me. "But you need to be practical. Maybe consider accounting. You've always been good with details." It was Grandpa Mike who stepped in. "I've got her tuition covered," he announced during a tense family dinner, cutting off my mother's latest suggestion that I reconsider my options. My parents were surprised, but didn't protest. Money from Grandpa Mike meant they could direct all their resources toward Olivia's education and her growing list of essential experiences that seemed to require constant financial support. Study abroad in Paris? Of course. Summer internship in New York? Naturally. A new laptop, new clothes for interviews, a car to get to her part-time job at a marketing firm? All necessary investments in Olivia's future. Meanwhile, I worked part-time at a coffee shop to cover my books and living expenses, took the bus to campus, and wore the same winter coat for 4 years straight. But I had my education, my writing, and my weekly visits with Grandpa Mike, who never failed to ask about my latest short story or essay. "You're building something lasting, Amelia," he'd say. "Stories endure." I graduated with honors, my creative writing thesis receiving special recognition from the department. My parents attended the ceremony, of course, but left immediately after to celebrate Olivia's new job at a prestigious marketing firm in New York. I tried not to take it personally. Grandpa Mike took me out to dinner that night, just the two of us. "I'm proud of you, kiddo," he said, raising his glass of wine. "You stayed true to yourself. That's rarer than you might think." 2 months later, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. 6 months after that, he was gone. The loss hit me like a physical blow. While my father handled the arrangements with his usual efficient detachment, and my mother fretted about the appropriate mourning attire, I felt like a vital part of myself had been severed. The one person who truly saw me, who valued me for exactly who I was, had vanished from the world. The reading of the will was scheduled for a Tuesday afternoon in the offices of Grandpa Mike's longtime lawyer, Mr. Abernathy. I arrived early, dressed in a simple black dress, my eyes still red from crying the night before. My parents arrived precisely on time, my father checking his watch as if he had somewhere more important to be. Olivia swept in 10 minutes late, talking on her phone about some work crisis that apparently couldn't wait. "Let's get started, shall we?" Mr. Abernathy said, once Olivia had finally put her phone away. The will was straightforward. The house would go to my father, along with most of the financial assets. There were specific bequests for a few of Grandpa Mike's longtime friends and colleagues. And then, to my granddaughters, I leave the following. To Olivia, I leave the sum of $50,000 to support her business ambitions. And to my dear Amelia, who has always understood the value of art and beauty, I leave my painting, Memories of Elizabeth, the still life with the glasses, book, and teacup. May it remind you that being seen, truly seen, is one of life's greatest gifts. I felt tears spring to my eyes. He had left me the painting I loved most, the one that captured not just his art, but his heart. It was worth far more to me than any amount of money. Olivia, however, didn't see it that way. "A painting?" she said incredulously as we left the lawyer's office. "I get money for my business, and you get a dusty old painting? That hardly seems fair." "It's what Grandpa wanted," I said quietly. "And it's special to me." "Well, at least the money will be useful," she sniffed. "What are you going to do with a painting? Pay your rent with it?" My mother put a hand on Olivia's arm. "Now, dear, I'm sure your grandfather had his reasons. Although," she added, glancing at me, "it is rather an unusual choice. Are you sure you wouldn't prefer something more practical, Amelia?" "I want the painting," I said firmly. "It's what Grandpa left me." "Well, it's settled then," my father said, checking his watch again. "I need to get back to the office. We'll sort out the house and other belongings this weekend." I moved out of my small apartment in Boston the following month, taking a job as an editor at a small publishing house in New York. It wasn't my dream job, but it paid enough for me to afford a tiny studio in Brooklyn and still have time to work on my own writing in the evenings. Grandpa Mike's painting hung on the wall opposite my bed, the first thing I saw when I woke up, each morning, and the last thing I looked at before going to sleep. Life settled into a new rhythm. I made friends at work, joined a writing group, and even started dating a graphic designer named Josh, who lived in my building. My relationship with my family remained distant, but civil. We exchanged holiday cards and occasional phone calls, and I dutifully visited Boston for Thanksgiving and Christmas, enduring my mother's thinly veiled criticisms of my career, my apartment, and my life choices. Publishing? Is there really a future in that, with everything going digital? She would ask. Or, "Brooklyn seems so gritty. Wouldn't you be happier somewhere a bit more refined?" I learned to let her comments wash over me, to smile and nod and change the subject. Olivia's life, of course, remained the primary topic of family conversation. Her marketing career was flourishing. She was dating a successful investment banker, and she was considering buying an apartment in Manhattan. "Real estate is the best investment, you know," my mother told me during one holiday visit, as if imparting some rare wisdom. "Olivia is so smart to get into the market early." I murmured something non-committal and helped myself to more mashed potatoes. It was almost 2 years after Grandpa Mike's death when I got the call that would change everything. Was at work editing a promising manuscript from a new author when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize with a Boston area code. "Hello? This is Amelia," I answered, wedging the phone between my ear and shoulder as I continued to mark the manuscript. "Amelia Thompson? This is Marcus Chen from the Isabella, Stuart Gardner Museum." I sat up straighter, setting down my red pen. The Gardner was one of Boston's premier art museums, a beautiful Venetian-style palace filled with masterpieces. Grandpa Mike had taken me there countless times throughout my childhood. "Yes, this is Amelia. How can I help you?" "I'm calling about a painting by Michael Thompson, a still life with reading glasses and a teacup. I believe it's titled Memories of Elizabeth?" My heart skipped a beat. "Yes, that's my grandfather's painting. I inherited it when he passed away." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "That's interesting. The reason I'm calling is that we're putting together a retrospective of Boston area artists, and your grandfather's work has been recommended for inclusion. This particular painting was mentioned specifically by Professor James Winters at Boston University as being one of Michael's most emotionally resonant pieces." Pride swelled in my chest. Grandpa Mike's work was going to be in a museum exhibition. "That's wonderful," I said. "I'd be happy to loan the painting for the retrospective." Another pause, longer this time. "Ms. Thompson, according to our records, we already have the painting. It was donated to our permanent collection 3 months ago by an anonymous benefactor." The world seemed to tilt beneath me. That's not possible. The painting is hanging on my wall at home." "I see," Marcus said slowly. "Would it be possible for you to send me a photograph of the painting you have?" "Of course," I replied, my mind racing. "I'll do it as soon as I get home tonight." "Thank you. This is quite unusual. I'll send you my email address." I spent the rest of the day in a fog, barely able to focus on my work. As soon as I got home, I rushed to examine Grandpa Mike's painting, scrutinizing it more carefully than I ever had before. It looked exactly as I remembered, the worn leather book with its pages slightly ruffled by an invisible breeze, the delicate teacup with its faded floral pattern, the wire-rimmed reading glasses catching the soft afternoon light. But now, with doubt planted in my mind, I noticed things I hadn't before. The signature in the corner. Grandpa Mike always signed his paintings with a distinctive flourish on the M that was missing here. The texture of the paint, slightly too smooth, lacking the impasto technique he often used for highlights. The colors, just a shade too bright, missing the subtle, muted quality that made his work so distinctive. With shaking hands, I took several photos of the painting and sent them to Marcus Chen. His reply came within the hour. "Ms. Thompson, I regret to inform you that the painting you have appears to be a copy of the original work. The brushwork, signature, and several key details differ from the piece in our collection, which has been authenticated by multiple experts as an original. Michael Thompson. I've attached photos for comparison. I would be happy to discuss this matter further if you'd like to visit the museum." I stared at the attached photos, my vision blurring with tears of rage and betrayal. The painting at the Gardner was unquestionably the original. I could see it now. The subtle differences that only someone intimately familiar with Grandpa Mike's work would notice. Someone had replaced his painting with a carefully crafted forgery, and I had a sickening feeling I knew exactly who was responsible. With trembling fingers, I dialed my sister's number. "Hey, what's up?" Olivia answered, her voice bright and casual. "I was just about to call Mom and Dad. You'll never believe it. I found the perfect apartment. It's in the West Village, has the most amazing pre-war details, and—" "What did you do with Grandpa's painting?" I cut in, my voice hard and unfamiliar even to my own ears. The silence on the other end of the line told me everything I needed to know. "Amelia, what are you talking about?" she finally said, her tone carefully controlled. "Don't lie to me, Olivia. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum just called me about Grandpa's painting. The one he left me in his will. They have it. They say it was donated 3 months ago. What I have is a fake. Another long pause. You should talk to Mom and Dad about this. So they were in on it too? My laugh was bitter. Of course they were. Let me guess. My inheritance went toward your perfect apartment in the West Village? You're being dramatic as usual, Olivia sighed. It's just a painting, Amelia. No one even knew you'd notice. The casual cruelty of that statement knocked the breath from my lungs. No one even knew you'd notice. They had stolen from me. Not just any possession, but the one thing that connected me to the only person who had truly cared about me. And they hadn't even expected me to realize it was gone. I'm coming to Boston this weekend, I said coldly. Tell Mom and Dad to expect me. I hung up before she could respond. The next 2 days passed in a blur of rage and hurt. I called in sick to work, spent hours researching art theft and inheritance law, and contacted Mr. Abernathy, Grandpa Mike's lawyer, who was appalled by what I told him. This is a clear violation of your grandfather's will, he told me over the phone, not to mention potentially criminal. Art theft and fraud are serious matters, Amelia. If what you suspect is true, your family could face significant legal consequences. I need to hear them admit it first, I said. I need to understand how they could do this to me. My parents' house looked exactly the same as it always had. The perfectly manicured lawn, the gleaming white columns flanking the front door, the tasteful wreath that changed with the seasons. It was early October, so the wreath was adorned with miniature pumpkins and gold-painted leaves. I stood on the porch for a long moment, gathering my courage before ringing the doorbell. My mother answered, her surprise at seeing me quickly masked with a practiced smile. Amelia, what an unexpected surprise. Your father's just got home from golf. Come in, come in. She led me to the living room, where my father was reading the newspaper in his favorite armchair. He looked up, nodded briefly, and returned to his reading. Amelia, Olivia mentioned you might be dropping by. Is she here? I asked, remaining standing even as my mother gestured toward the sofa. No, she's back in New York. Something about a closing tomorrow. So exciting about her new apartment, isn't it? In the West Village, no less. Such a prestigious area. Yes, I heard all about it, I said, my voice steady despite the anger coursing through me. In fact, that's why I'm here. My father finally set down his newspaper, something in my tone catching his attention. What do you mean? I got a call from the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum this week. They're planning a retrospective that includes Grandpa Mike's work, including Memories of Elizabeth, the painting he left to me. My mother's smile faltered almost imperceptibly. Well, that's lovely, dear. Your grandfather would have been so proud. The thing is, I continued, according to the museum, the painting was donated to their permanent collection 3 months ago by an anonymous donor. The room went very still. My father cleared his throat. Amelia, don't, I cut him off. Don't lie to me. The painting on my wall is a forgery, a good one, but definitely not Grandpa's original. What I want to know is, why? Why would you steal from me? Your own daughter? My mother sank onto the sofa, her posture still perfect even as her face grew pale. It wasn't stealing, Amelia. It was reallocating resources where they could do the most good. The audacity of her statement struck me like a physical blow. Reallocating resources? It was my inheritance, mine, the one thing Grandpa left specifically to me. Your grandfather didn't understand the value of what he was giving you, my father said, his tone reasonable as if explaining something simple to a child. That painting was appraised at over $200,000 after his death. We kept that information from you because, frankly, we knew you'd be difficult about it. Difficult? I repeated incredulously. Because I might object to having my inheritance stolen? No one stole anything, my mother interjected. The painting is still in the family, just repurposed. Olivia needed help with the down payment on her apartment. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and the market in New York is so competitive. You know how important this step is for her career. I stared at her in disbelief. So you sold my painting, without my knowledge or consent, to help Olivia buy an apartment, and donated a portion to the museum in your grandfather's name, my father added, as if this somehow absolved them. It's a win-win, really. The public gets to appreciate the art, Olivia gets her apartment, and you, well, you have the replica. Most people couldn't even tell the difference. I could tell, I said quietly. I noticed as soon as someone pointed it out. My father waved this away. The point is, we made a practical decision. That painting was worth far more than the money your grandfather left to Olivia. This way, things are more equitable. Equitable? I laughed, a hollow sound. When has anything in this family ever been equitable? Olivia has always been the favorite, always gotten everything she wanted, while I had to fight for even the smallest recognition. The one person who valued me, who saw me, was Grandpa Mike. And now you've taken the one thing he left me. Don't be so dramatic, Amelia, my mother sighed. It's unbecoming. We're your parents. We have always wanted what's best for both our daughters. No, I said, my voice suddenly clear and steady. You've always wanted what's best for Olivia. I was just an afterthought, but not anymore. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder containing the documents Mr. Abernathy had prepared. These are papers from Grandpa's lawyer. I'm formally requesting the return of my painting or financial compensation equal to its fair market value. If you refuse, I'll be filing a civil lawsuit for theft and fraud, as well as reporting the anonymous donation to the museum as stolen property. My father's face darkened with anger. You would sue your own family? Over a painting? The same family that stole from me? I countered. Yes, I would. And it's not just a painting, it's what it represents. It's about respect and honesty and honoring Grandpa's wishes. It's about finally standing up for myself. My mother stood, her face a mask of disapproval. I think you should leave now, Amelia. You're clearly upset and not thinking rationally. Sleep on it, and I'm sure you'll realize that alienating your family over a material possession is not worth it. I'm thinking more clearly than I ever have, I responded, placing the folder on the coffee table. You have 1 week to respond. After that, Mr. Abernathy will proceed with legal action. I walked out without looking back, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. For the first time in my life, I was standing up to my family, refusing to be the overlooked, undervalued daughter any longer. It hurt terribly. But underneath the pain was a sense of rightness, of finally honoring not just Grandpa Mike's legacy, but also myself. The next morning, I received a text from Olivia. You're being ridiculous and selfish. It's just a painting. Let it go. I didn't respond. That afternoon, my mother called. Your father and I have discussed your demands, she said frostily. We think you're being extremely ungrateful, but we're willing to send you $10,000 to put this unpleasantness behind us. The painting is worth $200,000 by your own admission, I replied. And it was left to me legally in Grandpa's will. $10,000 isn't even close to adequate. That's our offer, Amelia. Take it or leave it. Then I'll leave it. And I'll see you in court. True to my word, I instructed Mr. Abernathy to file the lawsuit the following week. The paperwork named my parents and Olivia as defendants, charging them with theft, fraud, and violating the terms of Grandpa Mike's will. I also contacted the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, explaining the situation and providing them with copies of the will and other documentation proving my rightful ownership of the painting. The museum was understandably dismayed. We have strict protocols for accepting donations and verifying provenance, Marcus Chen told me when I visited Boston to meet with him. The painting was donated through an art broker who provided documentation that appeared legitimate. In light of what you've shared, we'll cooperate fully with any investigation and legal proceedings. The next few months were among the most difficult of my life. My family's betrayal had left a wound that seemed impossible to heal, and the legal battle consumed my time, energy, and savings. My parents hired an expensive attorney who tried every possible tactic to have the case dismissed, arguing that family matters should be handled privately, not in court. But Mr. Abernathy was thorough and persistent. "The law is clear on this matter," he assured me. "A will is a legally binding document. Your grandfather's intentions were explicit, and your family's actions constitute both civil and potentially criminal violations." My relationship with my family deteriorated completely. My mother wrote me a lengthy email expressing her profound disappointment in my choices and lamenting the fact that I would destroy our family over a material object. My father stopped speaking to me entirely. Olivia alternated between angry texts accusing me of jealousy and tearful phone calls pleading with me to drop the lawsuit. "The apartment is already in my name," she cried during one such call. "If you win this lawsuit, I could lose everything. Is that what you want? To ruin my life? I want what's rightfully mine," I told her. "What Grandpa wanted me to have. What all of you took from me without a second thought." "It's not fair," she insisted. "You got the painting, I got the money, but the painting turned out to be worth way more. How is that fair?" "It wasn't about monetary value to Grandpa," I said. "It was about connection. He knew you valued money and success, and I valued art and sentiment. He left us each what would mean the most to us." "That's so naive," Olivia scoffed. "Everything comes down to money in the end." "Not to me," I said, "and not to Grandpa. That's something none of you ever understood." The case was scheduled for trial in the spring, but as the date approached, my parents' attorney contacted Mr. Abernathy with a settlement offer. They would pay me the full appraised value of the painting, $220,000, plus my legal fees. In return, I would drop the lawsuit and sign a non-disclosure agreement about the entire affair. "It's a generous offer," Mr. Abernathy admitted when we discussed it. "You would be fully compensated financially, and it would avoid the additional stress and expense of a trial." I considered it seriously. The past few months had been exhausting, and the prospect of a lengthy public court battle was daunting. But something about it felt wrong, as if I were saying that my relationship with Grandpa Mike, the meaning behind his bequest, could be reduced to a dollar amount. "What about the painting itself?" I asked. "Is there any way to get it back? From the museum?" Mr. Abernathy shook his head. "That would be complicated. The museum accepted it in good faith, and while they might be compelled to return it if the court determines it was stolen property, they could also make a case that they are the injured party in this situation. Additionally, now that it's part of a museum collection, there are questions of public interest to consider." I thought about it for several days, turning the options over in my mind. Finally, I called Marcus Chen at the Gardner Museum. "I've been thinking about my grandfather's painting," I told him. "About what he would have wanted." "Yes?" Marcus sounded cautious. "Grandpa Mike was an art professor for over 40 years. He believed in making art accessible, in sharing beauty with the world. If he knew his painting was in your museum, being appreciated by thousands of visitors, being included in a retrospective of his work, he would be proud." "That's a generous perspective, Ms. Thompson, especially given the circumstances." "I have a proposal," I continued. "If I were to allow the painting to remain in the museum's collection, would you consider a permanent acknowledgement of the proper provenance? Something that honors my grandfather's intention to leave it to me while still allowing the public to enjoy it?" There was thoughtful silence on the other end. "I think we could certainly arrange that. What did you have in mind?" By the time the settlement conference took place, I had a counteroffer prepared. My parents and Olivia would still pay me the full appraised value of the painting plus legal fees. The painting would remain at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, but with a plaque that read, "Michael Thompson, Memories of Elizabeth, oil on canvas. Bequeathed by the artist to his granddaughter Amelia Thompson, donated to the museum in her honor. Additionally, the museum would establish a small annual grant in Grandpa Mike's name for young artists, funded by my family as part of the settlement. My parents' attorney initially balked at the additional terms, but Mr. Abernathy was firm. The alternative is a public trial that will expose your client's actions in detail, he reminded them. Given the clear documentation we have, including the explicit terms of the will and evidence of the forgery commissioned to replace the original painting, I believe Ms. Thompson's position is quite strong. After a tense negotiation, they agreed to my terms. The settlement papers were drawn up, and on a chilly April morning, I sat across a conference table from my parents and sister as we all signed the documents that would formally end our legal battle and effectively our relationship as a family. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. My father's face was stone. Olivia looked both angry and oddly deflated. "I just want to know why," I said as we prepared to leave. "Why you thought it was okay to take something so personal, so meaningful to me." My mother finally looked at me, her expression a mixture of disdain and genuine confusion. "It was just a painting, Amelia, just a thing. Family should be more important than things." "It wasn't just a painting to me," I replied. "It was a connection to Grandpa, a recognition that he saw me when none of you ever did. And if family is so important, why didn't that apply when you decided to steal from me?" My father stood abruptly. "This conversation is pointless. The matter is settled legally. Let's leave it at that." As they filed out of the conference room, Olivia paused at the door. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "I didn't know how much the painting meant to you. I just saw it as an asset that could help me get what I wanted. I never thought about it from your perspective." It wasn't an apology, not really, but it was the closest thing to acknowledgement I had received from any of them. I nodded once, not trusting myself to speak, and she left. Mr. Abernathy placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You stood your ground, Amelia. Your grandfather would be proud." The settlement money arrived in my bank account the following week. It was a surreal moment, seeing my balance suddenly increase by such a significant amount. Money that could change the trajectory of my life, open doors that had previously seemed firmly closed. But it came with the bitter knowledge that whatever tenuous bonds had connected me to my family were now irrevocably severed. I took a week off work and flew to the coast of Maine, staying in a small cottage with a view of the Atlantic. I walked on the rocky beaches, watched the endless rhythm of the waves, and thought about family, about inheritance, about what we owe to those who came before us and those who will come after. On my last night there, I wrote a letter to Grandpa. Mike, not to send, of course, but as a way to organize my thoughts, to connect with his memory. "I fought for your painting," I wrote, "not because of its monetary value, but because it represented your recognition of who I am. In the end, I chose to share it with the world, to let it hang in a museum where others can see the beauty you created, can feel the love and longing captured in those simple objects. I think you would understand. You always understood me better than anyone. The money will help me build a new life, one that honors your belief in me. I'm going to take a sabbatical from my editing job and focus on my writing. Maybe I'll travel, see some of the art and places you used to tell me about. Paris, Venice, Prague. Maybe I'll finally write that novel I've been thinking about for years. My relationship with Mom, Dad, and Olivia may be beyond repair. That hurts. More than I expected, even after everything. But I'm trying to see it as an opportunity to surround myself with people who value me for who I am, not who they think I should be. To create a chosen family that sees me clearly, as you always did. I miss you every day. But I carry your lessons with me, about art, about beauty, about staying true to yourself even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. Thank you for seeing me. I promise I'll always try to see myself as clearly. When I returned to New York, I gave notice at my publishing job, explaining that I was taking a year to focus on my own writing. My colleagues were supportive, if a bit envious. Josh helped me pack up my tiny studio. We'd been dating for nearly 8 months by then, and though it was still early, there was a solidity to our relationship that gave me hope. "I'll miss you," he said as he taped up the last box. "But I think this is exactly what you need, a chance to figure out who you are outside of your family's shadow." "You could visit," I suggested. "I'm thinking of starting in Paris. I hear they have decent croissants." He laughed. "I might just take you up on that." I donated the forgery of Grandpa's painting to a local community arts center, explaining its complicated history. They were delighted to have it. Replica or not, it was still a beautiful piece that could inspire their students. The day before my flight to Paris, I visited the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum to see Grandpa Mike's painting in its new home. It hung in a quiet corner of a gallery, sunlight streaming through the nearby window, illuminating the delicate brushwork, the thoughtful composition, the palpable sense of presence he had captured. Beside it was the plaque we had agreed upon in the settlement, acknowledging both his artistry and his intention to leave this piece to me. As I stood there, a young woman with a sketchbook paused beside me, studying the painting with careful attention. After a few moments, she began to draw, her pencil moving rapidly across the page. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" I said. She nodded without looking up. "There's something so intimate about it, like you're glimpsing a private moment that's still somehow universal. We all know what it's like to put down a book and step away for a moment, leaving part of ourselves behind on the page." Her insight startled me. It was exactly what Grandpa Mike had intended to capture. "Are you an artist?" I asked. "Trying to be," she said with a small, self-deprecating smile. "I'm in my first year at the art school here. Sometimes I come to the museum to practice, to try to understand how the masters created their effects. My grandfather painted that," I told her, surprising myself with the admission. Now she did look up, her eyes widening. "Really? That's amazing. He was incredibly talented." "He was," I agreed. "He taught art for many years. He believed that art was a way of truly seeing the world, of paying attention to moments and feelings that might otherwise slip away unnoticed." "That's exactly it," she said, her face lighting up with recognition. "That's what I'm trying to learn how to do." We talked for nearly an hour, this young art student and I, about technique and meaning, about the way art connects us across time and space, about the power of really seeing. As I finally prepared to leave, she hesitated, then carefully tore a page from her sketchbook. "Here," she said, offering it to me. "It's not very good, but I'd like you to have it." It was her sketch of Grandpa Mike's painting, rendered in quick, confident lines that somehow captured the essence of the piece, the sense of presence in absence, of life continuing just beyond the frame. "Thank you," I said, genuinely touched. "This means a lot to me." As I left the museum and stepped out into the bright spring afternoon, I felt a sense of completion, of having honored Grandpa Mike's legacy in a way that extended beyond just the material value of his painting. By sharing his work with the world, by connecting with a young artist who understood what he had been trying to express, I had kept his spirit alive in a way that felt right. The settlement money had given me freedom to write, to travel, to build a life on my own terms. But it was this moment of connection, this recognition that art and stories could bridge gaps between strangers, between generations, that felt like the true inheritance. My family had chosen money and status over integrity and emotional bonds. They had valued what could be bought over what could be felt. In fighting for my inheritance, I had discovered a different kind of wealth, the richness of staying true to myself, of honoring my connections to those who truly saw me, of creating meaning that extended beyond material possessions. As I headed to the airport the next day, the young artist's sketch carefully preserved in my journal, I felt lighter than I had in years. The pain of my family's betrayal hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed into something else, a determination to build a life filled with authenticity and genuine connection, to surround myself with people who valued the same things I did. Grandpa. Mike had given me more than a painting. He had given me the courage to see myself clearly, to stand up for what mattered, to recognize that sometimes the most valuable inheritances aren't things at all, but the lessons we carry forward and the stories we choose to tell. I was ready to write my own story now, one chapter at a time.